And say welcome everyone to our weekly call. I hope you had a fantastic and restful weekend. I'm just actually, let me just share my screen momentarily, which I've now done. Yeah, by way of our agenda for the call this week, a few weeks back, there was a request to cover the multi-signer model. So that's going to be the theme of our discussion this week. So in a second, I'll hand over to Matthijs Mekking of ISC, who's very kindly volunteered to talk to this topic. Matthijs will share his thoughts, and then that will no doubt lead into a discussion. And then, time permitting, I'll, as always, talk about some risk developments, forthcoming events, etc., of which there was an awful lot this week, including a few particularly interesting ones. So hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the back end of the call to just catch up on some of those, and I'll also update you on some of our future call topics as well. So without anything further ado, let me stop sharing. Matthijs has already got his camera on, which is fantastic. So welcome, Matthijs, to the call overall, and in particular, thank you for volunteering, if that's the right word, or perhaps not being quick enough to think of a good excuse to talk about the multi-signer model. And without further ado, I'll mute and hand over to you. So we're in your hands.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for joining. I'm quite new to this platform, so for those who don't know me, I'm Matthijs. I've been working for DNS software quite a while now. These are some of the gigs I had in the past. And you
might want to reshare your slides or your screen, Matthijs. Sorry, where I shared mine, it bumped you off the screen sharing.
All right. Does this work now?
Yep, that's working fine.
Okay, so I was on this slide saying that I've been working in DNS and DNSSEC for quite a while now. And you asked me to talk a little bit about multi-signer model, or someone did at least, and that's why I'm here. And this is, I think most of you may have heard of it or already know quite well what it is, but this is the obligatory one slide that summarizes what it is and why we want it, or some people at least. Multiple DNS providers give you high reliability, so one provider has issues, the traffic relays to another, and your zone is still available. And having multiple DNS providers is actually something that already exists in regular DNS in the protocol. It's called zone transfers, but some enterprises are doing some tricks or are using online signing, so they can't really share the keys. And so they rely on signing the zones independently. So there was a discussion on this, needed to have a specification, and that is RFC 8900, which describes these models, and basically it describes two models. One, when there is a common KSK, there's one party that holds the KSK, and where the signers have their own unique ZSK. And to me, this is very similar to having offline KSK, except for having only one provider, you will have multiple providers. So both have the zone owner signing the DNS key set, but with multi-signer, the DNS key records, they come from multiple places. So, and then the other model is where each provider actually has his own unique key set, and this looks more like regular DNSSEC signing. And you have more options like CSK is possible, which is not possible in Model 1. And I think currently it's easier to adopt with the existing open source software. So far, at least to my knowledge, only not DNS supports Model 1. Again, looking at open source software here. So what does it mean actually to support a multi-signer? Now, for me, it is twofold. First is to be able to publish other DNSSEC records. So the DNS key, the CDS of the other ones. That is required so you can actually be part of a multi-signer group, and then we can do some tooling around it and implement multi-signer. And the second part is actually being aware of other signers. And I'm talking about this from a point of a signer. So for example, software implementation bind, who is doing DNSSEC signing. If it is aware of other signers, it can actually start automating these processes where you do a key rollover and you have to do some communication to the other signers. And being capable of the first part, being capable of doing multi-signer, sounds like an easy thing, but last year I tested this and I noticed there's a lot of implicit assumptions of being a single signer. For example, an unsigned zone shall not contain any DNSSEC records because we are the ones that's signing it. So we can filter out those records. Well, no longer true in the multi-signer model, of course. If there are DNS key records, there must be private keys available. Also not true. So there's a couple of these things that I encountered when I was making bind capable of at least doing multi-signer support. I was thinking of best current practice. There is no such thing right now. This is all fairly new, but at least there's a couple of obvious things that you can do. If you have multiple signers for your zone, at least use the same DNSSEC policy. So use the same parameters. The RFC actually mentions two things. Specifically, you should be using the same key algorithm because there's a DNSSEC requirement that if the DNS key set has a certain algorithm, should also be a signature of that algorithm available. And the second one is for denial of existence. Use the same algorithm for that, because if you don't, you probably will negatively impact the aggressive NSEC tree caching that resolvers may have implemented. They're looking up some NSEC tree records in the cache. It has different parameters. They can't use it to authenticate a denial of existence, so they have to query for those records again. Also looked at durations, TTLs on DNSSEC policy. I would say, again, use the same DNSSEC policy, but I don't see having variations in these at the different providers can have a lot of impact. So it's less important in my opinion. Second one, avoid key tag collisions. So key tag collisions are basically creating unnecessary work for the resolver. The resolver tries to validate a response, looks at the signature, looks at the key tag from the signature, and then tries to look up the DNS key. And if there's multiple available, it has to try them all. So 50% chance that it picks the wrong one first. So it's only unnecessary work. And now you may have heard about key trap, where an attacker can send a packet to a resolver where there are many signatures and many keys available, and the signatures all have the same key tag, and then obviously they're all crafted, so they all validate against the keys that are in the key set. So mitigation that software vendors have come up with, one of them is to allow up to a number of attempts, validation attempts, a number of failed attempts, and this number of failed attempts can be fairly low. So key tag collisions only contribute to these failed attempts, so it's best to avoid them, even with a single signer, but definitely with a multi-signer. And multi-signer, you have to take now into consideration that key generation is a race. Two providers can start a key rollover at the same time, and there's a chance that they might pick the same key tag. Talking about key rollovers, what changes with multi-signer? For the Model 1, very little, because offline KSK signing is presenting a number of DNS keys to the owner of the KSK, and they will generate some signed DNS key R sets and then present to the provider, or in this case, the multiple providers. For Model 2, there's a little bit more changes. For the ZSK, when you publish this new record, it should also be published to all the other providers, obviously. And the same is true when you remove that key, the old key again. And here we have to consider, when do you know when the new key is published? You can query those DNS key R sets at each provider. Is that at each public name server, or is that some configuration? What happens if there's an issue, someone is not updating it? How are the rollback mechanisms? And those things are yet to be defined. For KSK rollovers, Model 1 is basically the same as before, because there's a common KSK, so there's only one KSK owner. For Model 2, again, you need to publish some records to all providers. In this case, the CDS key, which tells when the DS can be updated. There's actually two methods for CDS key RSet publishing. You can keep them in sync with what's supposed to be in the parent, in the DS RSet, or after the rollover, you can remove the CDS key set, which basically says if this set is empty, no change is required. I don't think it will be a problem if providers use different methods, but it will probably be a good practice if you keep the method consistent. And the same I would say for what kind of rollover method you use. Double KSK, double DS are both methods that are viable. One has some advantages, other advantages than the other, but I don't think they will be problematic if they are mixed. One provider is using another one than the other provider. But again, good practice is probably to keep these things consistent to avoid some confusion or element of surprise. Okay, let's switch to algorithm rollover. Algorithm rollover is a different beast. There's actually a change in your DNSSEC policy configuration, and I like to see it as enabling DNSSEC for a certain algorithm. So consider theoretically a resolver that doesn't know about the first algorithm yet. So to him, this zone is insecure. And now we're introducing a new algorithm. If one provider is moving faster than the other, then this resolver might pick up on the new algorithm and think, hey, this is fine. But if it's now directed to the other provider that is not fast enough for so to say, it's not finished with this new algorithm, then, well, you run the risk that your zone, from this point of view, becomes bogus. So this requires more coordination, the algorithm rollover. You really need to make sure that the new algorithm is introduced, all the signatures are introduced before you move on publishing the DNS keys, and then finally the DS set in the parent. And once that is done, only then you can start thinking about removing the old algorithm. This automation is for the multi-signer. All these processes is being worked on. There's a tool available which is called Music, which is a tool that controls signers in a certain multi-signer group to do key rollovers, to add new signers, to remove signers again. And all these scenarios are described in the draft that's being worked on in the ITF. And I find it to be a very good tool for testing if your software is multi-signer proof. Definitely find some issues in our software. This tool we can call a centralized approach, where you have one entity controlling all the signers and tell them what to do. The other way is a distributed environment where the providers hopefully can talk to each other, and if they're initiating a key rollover, they can figure it out on their own. Distributed, I don't think is very well supported currently in the software, but it's being worked on. And one thing that will greatly help for that, I think, is generalized DNS notifications, which is also a draft in the ITF that's being worked on. And that basically says that we can reuse the notify that we know from the SOA record to tell secondaries, hey, there's a new zone update, please transfer it. We can also use the notify for notifying the parent that the CDS DNS, the CDS R set has been updated, please update your DS record. Or to a peer signer to say, hey, I have a new DNS key record, please query for my DNS key record and add the pre-published ZSK to your version of the zone as well, please. And that then combined with polling to ensure that the new record has actually been published or withdrawn, whatever the step is in the rollover, I think we can implement this multi-signer processes in a better way. So here's a diagram of how that might look, where multiple providers are in a multi-signer group, 3 in this case, and there's a parent. And I tried to capture here the communications that would then be happening between the parties when we implement these automation. In this example, we're publishing a CSK. The provider A would do that, and it would send generalized notifications to the other providers, B and C in this case, and that's step 2 here. And they would then start querying the providers. Although provider A is initiating this, provider B and C cannot really tell where this notify came from. So they have to query all the providers. And that's probably okay, because usually it's just a handful. A handful is already quite a lot. And so provider C usually doesn't have an update for the DNS key, nothing happens. But if you query provider A, you will see a change in DNS key set, and it can now update the DNS key itself. So that happens. Provider A has to query for the DNS key records to ensure that the update has been done at all the providers, and then we can continue the updating the CDS set. Similar to the parent, we'll send the notify for the CDS, parent queries CDS, updates the DS, provider needs to do some polling, and then we can continue the rollover. So that's mostly what I wanted to lay out. It might have been going faster than, I don't know, than anticipated. If you didn't follow along, here's the too long don't read. Basically, there's 2 models. If you already do offline KSK, choose model 1. Best current practice, that doesn't exist, but if we would start one, use the same DNSSEC policy on providers, especially when it comes to algorithms. Be aware of key tag collisions. Key rollovers become more transactional because you now have to deal with multiple parties. Algorithm rollover requires even more coordinations, and there is efforts to automate these processes. Talking a little bit about the Bind9 software. Bind9 is multi-signer proof, I would call. It's capable of publishing other DNSSEC records of the other providers. The implicit assumptions that we had on the single signer have been fixed, and that is true for the versions 9.18s and the upcoming 9.20. Model 1 we are working on currently, as well as multi-signer awareness. if you would like to play with the bind configuration, here's a configuration excerpt that I want to highlight. Key lifetime unlimited, I would say currently, because of the timings, and the software currently doesn't query for the other providers for the DNS key record. So you might run the risk, if you have specific lifetimes, that it runs too fast. On the other hand, if you do want to have lifetimes, you can use the publish and retire safety and set up to a high value, which basically delays the key rollover. So if anything goes wrong in that time, there's time to react. These two commented lines are here for the algorithm rollover. If you want to do an algorithm rollover, usually it's fine in a single provider to just change the algorithm. But in this case, as I said before, you need to have a coordination. You may have to make sure that the new algorithm is being used on all the providers. So first introduce these two lines, and only when all the providers have picked up on the new algorithm and the DS is in the parent, etc., you can remove the old lines. The CDNS key, CDS digest type options, can set them to empty. So only the manual added CDS and CDNS key records will be published, and no automated CDS will be introduced. Usually in bind, if a decay case published for a long enough time and it's time to publish the DS, we'll update the CDNS key and CDS record set with the corresponding records. And that may, with existing software, interfere with the CDNS keys from the other providers. I would argue to say inline signing no, because with inline signing enabled, you have two versions of zone, a raw version, an unsigned version, and a signed version, and where the DNSSEC records live is sort of becomes more complex, and I had better results when testing with this option off. And then with the lack of generalized notifications currently, rely on dynamic updates, and this would be configuration to grant provider access to update certain record sets at a certain zone. And that's all I have. Here are some references if you want to follow up on the topics.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Matthijs, and for the additional detail on specifically on bind. That's really useful. Okay, does anyone got any questions or comments for Matthijs on this? And as always, raise your virtual hand, or if it's easier, pop something in the chat, and I'll read it out if that's the easier thing to do. But whilst people are thinking, I must admit, as you were talking, Matthijs, I was sort of thinking to myself, does DELEG address some of the same use case? It's possible that others on the call may have an opinion on that, but that was just a thought that struck me as you were talking, whether there's any benefit here with DELEG, assuming that that's introduced.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch your comment at the beginning.
Oh, apologies. I was saying, as you were presenting, it just struck me. I wondered whether DELEG addressed some of the same use case. If that's a slightly unfair comment, on the assumption you may be familiar with the DELEG proposal, otherwise it's a completely useless question to ask.
No, I'm aware of that.
Before he drops off, I see Paul Vixie has also put in a complimentary comment in the chat as well with regards to your presentation. And so, any thoughts on that? And I suspect Ralph may well do as well on that particular topic.
Yeah, I'm aware of the DELEG proposal, although not on the specifics, but definitely DELEG will provide probably a different way of doing DNSSEC or at least signaling. So that might completely change the multi-signer thing, in my opinion. That said, I do think that DELEC is far away, for time being obviously relative. And so until the proposal is finalized and implemented and being adopted, I think we have to focus on how things work in DNSSEC. And then having multiple providers, this is currently the best way forward, in my opinion.
Good, thanks. And yeah, fair comment about user tools we have rather than ones we may wish to have in the future. Ralph, I'm not sure if you're commenting on that or something entirely different.
Yeah, well, I mean, being one of the authors of DELEC, I'll agree with what Matthijs said. I mean, DELEC, it will make things different, but in the end, if you still want to have multiple signer, you will have the same problems that you have when you are having a regular DS and stuff now. So I'm not seeing that changing or improving a lot. DELEC has other use cases that are sort of aside from that. But I think I feel I have a bit of a flashback on the time when we were initially rolling out DNSSEC, something like 15 or so years ago. And it is that we figured it out, but we had lots of complicated instructions how to do stuff, and we eventually got it to work. But over the course of the last decade or so, what we've seen is a lot of the stuff, it has been much more automated, and a lot of the configurations has been much more streamlined. And I feel, and I'm hoping we are doing this, that for this kind of setup, which technically will be something that, I mean, multi-signer sounds like, yeah, we'll have everything, every domain signed with more than one party all the time, but I don't think that's the main use case. I think the main use case for multi-signer is to switch from one provider to the other without actually going unsigned. And that's why I think we have to streamline the process a lot more, and maybe some of the standards work also to get this going. But I mean, I applaud the effort so far. And again, we've come a long time from kind of regular DNS now having something that actually independent parties can work with, but we probably need to continue on that road.
I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, Matthijs. Otherwise, I'd go, because it wasn't really a question, but it was a good set of observations.
Yeah, I think with DELEC, I have to agree that it doesn't necessarily interfere with how DNSSEC and DNS security is done right now. Although I do think it opens up the possibility to do DNS security with a different protocol because of the signaling in the record. So, and this is really far away, but there obviously DNSSEC is not perfect. There has been complaints, and some are valid. I think the protocol could have been nicer, but hey, here we are. We invented the protocol, and in hindsight, you came across other things. But with DELEC, we have an opportunity to signal what kind of protocols we support. So sure, DELEC and DNSSEC doesn't necessarily have to be incompatible with each other. The other thing that Ralph said was the better use case, or the more important use case, is switching from operators to from one provider to another without going unsigned. I think that's also a valid use case. I do think that multi-signer is not for everyone. It's probably only a part of the DNS environment that's going to do that. But what to me is important is that it's not necessarily changing the requirements of DNSSEC, but definitely changing the assumptions that we may have had. So we have to make sure that those are all compatible with each other. So get rid of the implicit assumptions that we had of being a single signer.
Yeah. Brilliant, thanks, and apologies for diverting slightly into DELEG.
Oh, no worries.
Possibly more on topic, a question from Libor in the chat. What's your opinion on sharing? It's just switched off my screen, hang on. What's your opinion of sharing DNS keys and CDSs with DDNS between the signers? This is what not DNS implemented, but mostly for single operator multi-signer cases.
I'm not sure if it's just the DNS in this question or DDNS. Then I don't know what DDNS exactly stands for.
Libor, are you able to unmute and just elaborate on your question?
Dynamic DNS updates, I think. If that helps.
Well, if it's dynamic DNS, I'm not sure what the relation is with sharing DNS keys. But let me try to.
And I can see Libor unfortunately can't unmute, which is unfortunate. One of the frustrations of using different platforms, I guess.
Well, you can type in the chat whether if it's dynamic DNS or DDNS typo.
Dynamic DNS, the incremental updates to a zone.
Right. I'm not sure if I see the relationship on sharing DNS keys. I see sharing DNS keys as having a single DNS key for multiple zones. And
we could maybe swap an email perhaps after the call if that would be more useful.
Yeah, I think so. I can make some generic comments that sharing DNS keys obviously a possible and a good solution for having for signing zones, especially if you have many zones. I don't think it has to make a lot of difference when doing dynamic updates to other ones, because for the DNS key record in the zone itself, it is a different record. So while the physical key is shared within the DNS, they are different entities because of the name. But things are falling into pieces now because between the signers. So does this mean that with not the same physical key is shared between multiple signers? It's unfortunate that Libor cannot unmute because that would make the discussion better or easier.
All right, well, let's see if we can cover that off offline if possible, just to clarify, because it sounds like it could be a really interesting discussion with some clarification. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Matthijs, or indeed comments on the subject matter? And again, pop something in the chat if you wish, or just raise your virtual hand if that's easier. And whilst people are thinking, are you happy to share your slides after the call, Matthijs?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Perfect. In anticipation that may well come up as a request. So, okay, I'll if you ping them to me, I'll share those post call in that case. And also perhaps put you and Libor in touch directly, so you can have a more informed discussion rather than try to second guess the meaning behind the question. Okay, doesn't look like there are any other questions. So let's pause there. So Matthijs, really thank you for doing that. That's incredibly helpful and actually covered a lot more in the presentation than I think anyone had a right to expect. So that's very much appreciated to do that, and hopefully that will provoke some thoughts offline with people. Right. Well, let me just, in the available time, then just briefly move on to other things. So not at all to do with multi-signer. Just covering some of the recent news headlines. So I just share my screen, and you're of course welcome to stay on the call or not, as your diary permits, Matthijs. Right. Hopefully, I'm sharing my screen now. So let me just move on. I'll just play out a few of these. I'm not going to cover everything because there's an awful lot of stuff in the news headlines this week. But selectively, you'll see the top one on the screen there. AdGuard has announced updates to its Windows and also its Mac software with support, improved support for encrypted client hello, and also improvements in the way it supported DOE as well. So that's something that people may wish to look at on its client software. In terms of protective DNS, the UK's NCSC has announced it will be changing supplier for the UK public sector protective DNS, a move to a combination of Cloudflare and Accenture from September of this year. I think that's basically means it'll be the same suppliers that provide a similar service to the sort of US public sector, certainly on the federal level in the US. So it's interesting that Cloudflare and Accenture are doing that in both the US and the UK. There's a really interesting presentation looking at user understanding or user awareness of behaviors related to encrypted DNS in web browsers. The presentation it's from a few months ago now, which I hadn't seen until this last weekend, but basically suggesting that what users believe is the meaning behind the messaging on browsers, and also the underlying settings is very different to what they actually do. So there's work to be done to improve user understanding. And then I was really shocked, the bottom one on the screen, some research I picked up on from Akamai. So thank you to Ralph and colleagues for this. 90% of organizations suffered from a DNS attack last year. A pretty shocking comment, or stat rather. In fact, on average, organizations suffered from 7.5 attacks last year, and an average cost of $1.1 million per attack. It's quite an extraordinary set of stats, so definitely worth reading that report to underline the size of the challenge. In terms of other things, I won't go through all of these. I'd maybe highlight the bottom but one, that the EU WHOIS verification recommendations. There's some recommendations have come out with a toolbox, but with the suggestion that in the event that doesn't address the problem, that there may be further regulation affecting WHOIS to follow. I think those of us that follow the sort of policy discussions around WHOIS will be aware that there's a fair amount of criticism from some regulators and law enforcement agencies about the lack of data accuracy. So I think this is an attempt within the European Union to address that problem. And then I mean, a few other interesting things, as you'll see, the DNS Research Federation, as always, doing interesting work, and they're setting up a round table looking at trends in the development of internet standards, I think in a month or so's time, as I recall. And then finally, the bottom one there, domain tools is has the Oh no, that's the right word. I did a search on the agenda for the forthcoming RSA conference, the annual event in San Francisco, and Domain Tools has got the only workshop scheduled through the week that's got DNS in the title, at least, which isn't to say that there's not more DNS stuff on the agenda, but that's the only one that overtly mentions it in the title. So I thought that was worth a mention. In terms of other stuff, I definitely won't go through all of these. The one I'll mention, third one down, at the Politico annual Tech and AI Summit, which took place in Brussels last Tuesday, I was quite shocked to hear the sort of minister from the French government comment that France is currently overwhelmed with propaganda in relation, I think this is primarily to the elections. So that, again, quite an alarming, if amazingly honest comment from a politician as to the scale of the problem on sort of disinformation, broadly speaking. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but in the interest of time, I won't go through all of those, but there's plenty of, in my view, very interesting things came out in the news over the last week. In terms of some deadlines that are coming up, if you have an aspiration to present the Applied Networking Research workshop, the deadline was last Friday, and it's been extended to the 22nd today, I think midnight tonight. So if you did have a paper and hadn't yet got around to submitting it, please press the send button very soon. Otherwise, you'll miss the extended deadline. Other things I think we've mainly talked about most of these previously. Perhaps just a reminder that the DNS working group at RIPE 88, the deadline is slightly longer than I thought, but it's, I guess, a couple of weeks' time, the 6th of May. So that's coming up relatively soon if you want to present anything at the DNS working group in RIPE in a short while. And then some other deadlines with sort of more time, so you can read those at your leisure. There's remain ample events running through the next quarter. Looking slightly beyond that, I should mention that there's the first suggested date for the ICANN DNS symposium, which as happened last year, is going to be combined with OARC 43, and these sort of very unofficial suggested dates are this third week of September, and a rumored location of Santa Marta, which, if you're not immediately familiar with that, is in South America, which I think it was known it was likely to be in South America, and potentially, if it is Santa Marta, that's on the sort of northern coast of Colombia. So that's absolutely not confirmed yet in terms of either the date or the location, but potentially third week of September in Santa Marta in Colombia. But no doubt confirmation, as it's like, probably in a couple of months' time or so. But if you're interested in going to the ICANN DNS Symposium and OARC 43, you might want to pencil that week in at least. In terms of
DNS OARC also has TBD that same week somewhere in South America. So I would imagine that they would be co-locating with ICANN.
Yes, so, yeah, sorry, that didn't come through because I know there's some background noise, Eric. Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah, OARC 43 and the ICANN DNS Symposium are likely to be co-located back to back in the same venue. I think following the successful.
And it's just really a guess. I don't know, but that sounds like that's what will happen.
Yeah, it was pretty successful, I thought, last year doing that in Da Nang. So I think it'll be the same model this year. They'll probably end up with about 4 days worth of content spread between the DNS Symposium, OARC 43, and I think one other topic as well. Okay, in terms of forthcoming topics, I mentioned on the call last week that we were probably going to move the DELEG panel discussion because turned out Jeff Houston is going to be on a plane, unfortunately, next Monday, and it looks highly likely it's going to be moved to the 13th of May. I'm just waiting for Paul Mokapetris to confirm his availability. And so just a further reminder to the DELEG co-authors. I think I discussed with Tel that it'd be good to have one of the co-authors take part on that panel to perhaps give a brief summary on the proposal as part of the lead into the panel discussion. So I'll maybe leave you all to talk amongst yourselves, but it'd be good to have one of you involved if your diaries permit.
I'll bring it up. I mean, I'll certainly be available, but maybe Taylor also is. We'll discuss it.
Perfect. All right, let me know who wins the beauty contest, which is a scary thought looking at all of you.
All right, I'm out.
One of you has to step forward, no matter what.
Didn't see that Taylor also was here.
Okay, the following week you'll see I've added in the exact title of this session to be probably changed somewhat, but Michael Pelage is going to talk about NIS2 and how it may impact on the domain name industry. Those of you that perhaps aren't following the intricacies of NIS2, it comes in effectively October of this year, so it's not so far away now, and absolutely does have an impact on the domain name industry, amongst others. So Michael suggested he'd sort of touch on that topic on the 20th. But as I said, I'll tweak the title with him to say it's slightly more punchy than what it currently says, but I just wanted to mention that was coming up. Anyway, so I think the net of that is we will have a change of topic for next Monday, which I'll sort out. If anyone has any aspirations to talk about anything in particular, do drop me a line separately, and there's a good chance your wish will be granted if you happen to be available next Monday. But yeah, don't join on Monday thing. We're going to be talking about DELEG because that will now be almost certainly pushed back to the 13th. And I think yes, that is indeed everything from me. So let me stop sharing and see. I think there's if there's anything that anyone else wishes to talk about in our remaining 7 minutes. So if you do, raise your virtual hand or put something in the chat if that's easier. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Give a chance just in case. Doesn't look like anyone is typing currently. So possibly not. Well, in which case, let's end the call there. Matthijs, thank you again for a really useful presentation on the multi-signer model. That's very much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks.
And yeah, ping me your slides, and I'll share those around post call along with a link to the recording. And other than that, have a great week, everyone. And catch up with you next Monday at the same time. But see you all then. Thanks all.
Thanks, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.